The Karnak temple complex, commonly known as Karnak, comprises a vast mix of decayed temples, chapels, pylons, and other buildings. The building of the complex began during the reign of Senusret I in the Middle Kingdom and continued into the Ptolemaic period, although most of the buildings date from the New Kingdom. The area around Karnak was the ancient Egyptian main place of worship of the 18th dynasty Theban triad with the god Amun as its head. It is part of the monumental city of Thebes. The Karnak complex gives its name to the nearby and partly surrounded modern village of El-Karnak. Avenue of sphinxes with human heads between the Karnak complex and the Temple of Luxor during ancient times. Altogether, 1,000 larger-than-life-size ram-headed sphinxes backed by gardens and pools lined this avenue. It had 6 spark shrines, similar to those in the open-air museum at Karnak, built at intervals along this path. They were used by the priests to rest and perform ceremonies while carrying the statue of Amun from one temple to the other. The northernmost shrine was located just outside Bab al-Amara at Karnak, while the southernmost was situated in the first courtyard of Luxor Temple. The current sphinxes with the body of a lion are thought to have heads modeled after Nectanebo I. He apparently replaced the earlier New Kingdom sphinxes with his own. Only some small segments of the Avenue of Sphinxes have ever been excavated. Preserved best are the 35 sphinxes exposed on each side of a paved roadway beginning at the Luxor Temple and extending a few hundred meters northward. Chapel of Serapis. Serapis or Sarapis is a Greco-Egyptian god. The cult of Serapis was introduced during the 3rd century BC on the orders of Ptolemy I of Egypt as a means to unify the Greeks and Egyptians in his realm. As one finally approaches the first pylon at the Luxor Temple, before it is a red granite obelisk, erected by Ramesses II. It stands 25 meters tall and weighs 254 tons. Facing the pylon, this obelisk is on the left of the gateway. There was also one on the right, but it was removed in 1835 to the Place de la Concorde in Paris. It stood 22.5 meters tall and weighs 227 tons. Each of the obelisks stood on a base with 4 baboons carved on its face. Situated inside the 2 obelisks and flanking the gate are 2 seated statues of kings, 7 meters tall. There are also traces of 4 striding statues of the king, one of which is now in the Louvre in Paris. The seated statue on the east shows a princess and Queen Nefertari, carved at much smaller scale than Ramesses II, next to the king's legs. On both statues, the sides of the king's throne are decorated with figures of Nile gods binding together the 2 lands of Egypt. On the gateway jambs between the pylons, Ramesses II stands with various gods. The colonnade in the Luxor temple in Luxor, Egypt, built by Amenhotep III of the New Kingdom's 18th dynasty to be the grand entrance to the Temple of Amen of the Opet, is one of the most impressive elements in any Egyptian monument. It represents the third stage in the king's elaborate building plans at Luxor Temple, and though it chronologically precedes the Great Court, it follows the element geographically. Indeed, this 100 meters long colonnade is a part of the oldest segment of this temple. These 14 great columns in 2 rows started during Amenhotep III's reign, completed after his death by Tutankhamun I and Horemheb. The columns, which stand 19 meters high, have open papyrus capitals that support a roof 21 meters above the ground. They are surmounted by abacis, which in turn support architrave blocks. Space is narrow, being only 10 meters wide. Originally, it had walls that rose to the full height of the roof with only small clerestory windows cut at the ceiling level to allow in sunlight. The figure of Amenhotep III alternates with those of his successors on door jambs and columns. Actually, many of the decorations that were completed during the reign of Tutankhamun might have been altered, so that the latter's name shows up only intermittently under that of Horemheb. However, the scenes within the colonnade on the walls are some of the best sources available for the study of the Opet festival. Two-seated double statues of Amen and Mut are on the south side, and there is also a grand statue of Amenhotep III with his wife within the colonnade. The Great Sun Court of Amenhotep III's Luxor Temple, located in Luxor, Egypt, measures about 45.11 by 56.08 meters, 148 by 184 feet. It was the first expansion northward from the core temple. It was not a part of the original core temple. This is a peristyle court with a double row of 60 columns with papyrus bundle capitals on 3 sides. Today, they are the best preserved and most elegant columns in the temple. In recent decades, ceremonies have continued to be performed in this court. It was here at Luxor in 1989 that workers found a deep pit containing a large quantity of statuary, buried probably in the 4th century AD during the installation of a cult of the deified Roman emperor. The cache, similar to one found in Karnak in 1903, included statues of gods, goddesses, queens, kings and kings as gods, as well as triads of divinities and royal groupings. At the back of the Great Sun Court, a hypostyle hall is blended in almost imperceptibly with the Sun Court. It is described as a hall of appearance. Though incorporated into the Sun Court, it was originally a sort of vestibule for the oldest part of the temple, being the first inner room of the temple proper. It consists of 4 rows of 8 bundled papyrus columns, 32 total columns that once supported a now non-existent roof. Some of the columns are inscribed with the names of various usurpers, including Ramesses II IV and Vi. Through the center of these columns runs an aisle. On the walls of this chamber, Amenhotep III is depicted before the gods of Thebes seating the temple above a plinth of figures personifying the Egyptian names. This space is known as the first antechamber, or more correctly, the chamber of the divine king. It served as a bark shrine during the pharaonic period proper, but was converted into a chapel for the Roman imperial cult. Inside this chamber opens 2 small peripheral chapels to the left and right, now in a ruinous condition, that perhaps served as shrines for the royal car and the royal bark. Beyond the apse lies the 4-pillared second antechamber, known as the offering vestibule. This is where the principal temple offerings were made to Amen. Here, the roof is almost complete, and a lot of paint survives on the splendid reliefs. Depictions on the walls of this chamber portray Amenhotep III driving cattle to the temple to be slaughtered before the god. He also offers Amen, the state god, during much of the New Kingdom, flowers, vases, and incense. He is then accepted by the god and conducted into his presence in the sanctuary. Immediately behind this vestibule is the bark shrine of Amun-Re. Inside the third antechamber, the shrine was rededicated to Alexander the Great after it was reconstructed by him. Representations in this chamber depict Amenhotep III or Alexander the Great standing before figures of the ithyphallic Amen.